All right. All right. Peace and blessings, Sapo, the success scholar, Haki Shakur, me here. Thank you all for tuning in and listening in. I wanted to do this piece. Currently, it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Wednesday afternoon. So I wanted to, give some insights and some analysis and views in terms of Dr. Wesley Muhammad's comments about the Africana Studies program and his comments on the Breakfast Club, saying that it is a worthless degree. Now, I did not go back and look at all the rest of the video, so I'm not sure what specifically he may have said after that, and I don't want to be someone that draws conclusions based upon one segment of a particular interview. But what I'm hoping, or what I believe, uh, according to what I saw, and someone can correct me if I'm mistaken, and perhaps there was something added on to that conversation, because if it was not said, and I just don't have time to go and try to be all up in someone else's life like that and what they talk about on a radio show. But enough of my colleagues, brothers in the struggle, uh, felt the need to address it. Latif, Dr. Issa, uh, Jackie Issa, Dr. Latif, and brother Ajay in New York felt the need to address it, as well as brother Mukasa. Uh, and Mukasa just asked for, let's do a debate on that. So, but before I get into my discussion, let me just add on that, you know, uh, I think that Dr. Wesley is a well informed brother. I think he is a decent quality brother, just as good, well rounded black man. What I mean by that is he's not out here, uh, being a degenerate, or just really causing mischief amongst our people. But I think sometimes, you know, he feels that individuals may not necessarily uh, be intellectually on his level, and I just can't agree with that, or not just him, but persons who follow the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, combined with a PhD in Islamic studies, where he feels he can, kind of, since the nation tends to have a more elevated posture within our community, many, it seems to give some individuals, particularly him, a more confidence booster. And perhaps the fact that, they get their message from God, they have supreme wisdom from God, and reasonably, that should be all you need. You shouldn't need Scientology, but that's another conversation. But uh, let me just go in terms of my background and experience, in terms of, how can I address the this Africana studies, and its relevancy or lack of thereof. Coming up in the streets of Baltimore, I had no knowledge of self. I did not get a relevant knowledge of self, actually, openly, until I went into the military. There, um, was in the Navy, and I studied. I studied diligently from the age 20 to 31. I didn't stay in the military, but I did 5 years. But I was studying, so I read 100 books a year for 11 years on a diverse amount of topics. Many of the scholars and teachers that I studied come out of the Africana studies, the Dr. John Henry Clark's, the Haki Metabuddies, the Chancellor Williams, to a less degree, some of the Akbars, the Barashangos, if you will. Those were some of the individuals I may have read, one or two Doc Ben books, or maybe, well, certainly Ivan Van Sertima's work. Started finding out about Dr. Rashidi, perhaps around that time, Broder, so those are some of the people that I perhaps touched upon. Dr. Africa, Lilia Africa, and I also, connected to the Nation of Gods, and my best friend was out. My best man, brother, was out in New York. Shala Rashad, rapper out of Strong Island, so he was definitely down for, the gods, and so when I read the Message to the Black Man, The Fall of America. So, and I understood certain dynamics with that, but, I was certainly connected to the five percenters on different levels. So, um, as well as, studying Hebrew Israelite teachings at that time, went to William and March, uh, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but later, as I grew up, and well, actually, while as I got out of the military, I became astutely aware of the degree mill, or the miseducation of European education, whether it's through a traditional HBCU or through, universities per se. And I did get out, did attend college. I did attend HBCU. So I got some credits, but I got very discouraged actually listening to some of the Negro professors that at that time, at age 24, 25, I felt that I had more knowledge than most of them, and it was a difficult process for me to sit and pay for books that that I knew was dated. Actually, some of the business, I was a business major, as well as, I was taking a computer repair training at that time. But um, at that time, I felt that um, I felt that I was being miseducated, as well as I was studying. And actually, I was working for Baltimore City's Mayor's Office of Employment Development. I was a youth advocate, job developer slash employment advocate, where I I mean, I had some college credits, from being in the military, and at 24, 25, I was looking very tactfully towards entrepreneurship. I, had to do for self mindset, do for self mentality, and I thought that just that I had the knowledge, I had the knowledge and the will to get out here and do it, and I thought sincerely that I connected the dots and had some real nation building type stuff, going on. I had the ideas, had connected, had some products going. So so that was a learning experience, and I quote my experience working for the Mayor's Office of Employment Development to say that it was my job to study, almost for a year, labor market, education, training, so I was reading, different books, of course, studying, spending days at the Black bookstore, and as well as Barnes and Nobles, reading the different business books, reading about college, reading about this growing, increasing debt uh, that many, you know, of us, unfortunately, were not aware of, and I became increasingly, um, you know, frustrated because, again, the 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 professors were Negroes, or they more so didn't know certain things about, the world that I was actually aware of. Reading as broadly as I did, history, business, psychology, sociology. Uh, just reading all these different areas. Um, I was very conscious that, as a black man, in these institutions. So I was a little worried, suffice to say, I was a little worried about, just matriculating through this, and even the question of student loan debt. Now, just coming up before just going straight in the military, I didn't have a whole lot of awareness about college per se. But when I was ready to get discharged, I was connecting to network marketing companies, so I was learning some things about network marketing industry, direct sales, as well as reading. I was when Claude may have just came out, Black Lake White Wealth, or had been out, and I think I was reading Dr. Amos Wilson's Blueprint around that time, and so I had a more, what was the first one? 98 came out in 98. So yeah, that was about the time that I met someone maybe in 1999, 2000, who introduced me to Blueprint. Uh, and I was planning on starting a health food store at that time, starting a conscious health food store. I was actually connected to a brother in an Islamic community in the Baltimore area, where that was a part of, the mission, the deen. So later on, and let me get to my point. I wanted to give just an overview of how, now being the success scholar, how I view African studies, because again, I had that foundation, Haki Metabudi, Dr. John Hibbert Clark, for the most part, Chancellor Williams. Those were a little bit of Sir Alvin Mansurmus. Those are some of the people that I dug into their information more than I'd say anyone else. So a little later, got connected to ASCAC and some of the ASCAC scholars, and this was a lot later, maybe a few years ago. But not just that, but connecting to the conscious community, the African spiritual traditions that the Akan, the Yoruba communities, and really understanding, like Dr. John Hibbert Clark talks about in, I'm not sure if I had a book about the revolution, the Towards the Black Revolution, I believe is the book. But I got a good grasp, as well as Malenga Karenga, who I picked up his intro to Black Studies early. Some good jewels in that, and you can't. I felt that you can't be well rounded until you touch upon some of these particular pieces. So, being with the ASCAC scholars, and even some of those that are connected to the Association of Black Psychologists, some of the scholars who were both psychologists as well as African historians to a lesser extent, I realized that not everybody certainly need to be a PhD per se, but there are certain parts and pieces. If I did not, was not necessarily influenced by Dr. John Henry Clark or Chancellor Williams, I probably would not have picked up a Amos Wilson's book. Uh, I probably would not have even attempted to connect the dots and with Ashwa Kwesi. So I probably would have been lost, actually, if it wasn't necessary for the African Senate scholars who taught certain values, taught us who we are. So now let me get to the point in terms of what I see. Now, what Dr. Wesley said, and he kind of covered it up. If you're listening carefully to that part, he said $80,000. Well, I certainly encourage discernment. We can't be slaves under certain parts and pieces of information to acquire certain pieces of information. But you know, we have to be able to evaluate these different universities that are attempting to create slaves. And and I think it's not just about the debt, it's also about becoming a well-rounded, well-adjusted individual. And I don't believe that universities by itself are creating that. Because if we look at some of these universities that allow for little wings to come and get paid on campus, and we're going to have, where, as if I may quote Dr. Tawanza Jufu, he says that they're majoring in sex and minoring in alcohol and drugs, as well as if we understand the counterintelligence program, and we understand that these institutions are targeted, by drug dealers, tactfully, to get a good quality customer for life. If you can get someone, a college student, hooked on a hardcore drug, that's an employed drug addict, an employed drug addict who may be a good customer for the next 30, 40 years, and a highly paid, functioning drug addict. So we got to understand that, it's not just about the cost of an education, but the protection of the mind. And unfortunately, many individuals are looking at these educations one-dimensional, like, oh, just a degree. But it's also, individuals studying, learning about their health. Are they studying the Black economy? Are they studying the Black world? Are they, um, because you can go broke through divorce, you can go broke through losing your job or ill health. You can go broke through being a gambler or a smoker, smoking cigarettes or doing drugs. There are many different factors that can cause an individual, not just high student loan debt, buying expensive cars, being a lost Negro, out here spending $1,000 on a pair of shoes, or $1,500 for a belt. So you can be a lost Negro and do some silly things to blow your money, even if you get it. You can have a criminal mind, or you can get a stupid charge, in this society. So there's a term that I would like to throw out, that what, where you can't measure intelligence. It's called emotional intelligence. That's becoming a field within itself, developing an understanding of both the emotions, as well as you know the having being able to adjust your emotions to a particular situation. And that's where we need warrior scholars, since we see many individuals out here with alphabets behind their names, and they're going on tirades and rants, and they're saying things out of emotion versus what's logical. Now, what Dr. Wesley could have said, if he was not directly attacking Afrocentric, African-centered studies, Africana studies, is that things like art or liberal arts degree, communications degree, psychology, sociology, these are social work, and you can Google. Some people have opinions about these so-called top 10 worthless degrees. You can Google these, and you can reconcile whether you think they're worthless or not. But the question, and I believe that the point that was made was, for $80,000. He just threw that hypothetical number out there. But um, I'm, on some levels, he can perhaps justify that, because who wants to pay $80,000 for a so-called education when you can become a really truly well-rounded builder by working with a success scholar and truly have a better, more prepared existence. So and yes, it will cost certainly to work with someone like me, but what I recognize is that he apparently, and I didn't see the whole thing, but he went to that first. He went to African studies first, right? So so I'm just like, man, he went straight for individuals who've put years and years of study in. But what is interesting about that is on some levels, he matriculated to get an Islamic studies degree. So I'm just wondering, like, who's defining the value of this knowledge, right? Who's defining what is valuable? Is it African knowledge not valuable? Islamic knowledge valuable? Because if he wanted to be objective and be you know objective in a sense, he could and tactful and not perceivingly to be disrespectful, he could have said, well, hell, I got this damn Islamic degree, but maybe, I don't know how he paid for it, but he could have said, I probably wouldn't encourage my children to get an Islamic degree. So, and again, since I know the brother, and let me just show you all. This is the lecture, the debate that they did, and Wesley is a little unique in some cases, brothers, because he certainly studied more well-rounded in an African-centered perspective, because he studied many of our African-centered scholars. So I'm not going to dismiss his total understanding of the African Studies program, as well as the scholars that are in it. But it certainly could be perceived as divisive when you don't even do a self-criticism about your own personal degree path. And on some levels, for real, in a bigger scheme, and just let me just add this, because for me, I just wanted, you know, I just didn't want to give my money to Negroes, and I didn't want to give my money to these European institutions to make 20, 40, well, 40, $50,000 a year. So my idea was, personally, how can I get close to six figures, and I can do some bigger and better things, financially speaking, with that, than dealing with the miseducated Negroes, buying a book that would cost me $100 or whatever, and sitting in a classroom for 45 semester hours, or 30, 40, 45 semester hours, each credit, 15 hours of credit, whatever. So again, I think that I'll close and say that, again, I think that Dr. Wesley, who's going to be doing a presentation on that, I guess he just posted something, is going to be addressing what he calls the BS degrees. I didn't know what he was talking about when I heard. I'm like, man, he going hard, and this is why a few people have done videos critiquing him. But since I feel like I know him on some levels, and overall, he's very intellectual. But again, I think that his disdain, mostly for I guess, those who critique Islam, is what is driving that his critique of the African studies movement. And I think that him partnering it or putting it together with the whole college cost dynamic could be perceived as a smokescreen. But since he did say it, I think that, personally, that I'm best qualified to address it because I've spent time working with young black people who may not necessarily be college bound. I mean, I was taught I wasn't college bound. That's why I went in the military, and this is why yeah, I got what I encourage young people, a 21st century career skill that is not going to have you in a dead end job and where you can, get close to six figures, because outside of that, you will have to run your own business in order to get over the six-figure mark. You're definitely going to have your own business. So the conversation from Dr. Wesley should need, and what he may not necessarily be as astute on, is the different people that are out here and the different career paths that individuals are engaged in, that are making them decent amount of money, that's preparing them for a business that not just hustling oils and incense and final calls and the bean pie. We need more than that. So Dr. Wesley, who may not necessarily be as kind of grassroots and scholastic to that degree, to know what these different options are and how to build, uh, tactfully in different spaces, and how you have to mix out here with different people. You're gonna have to get custom, and not every customer is gonna be in your African centered Akan Yoruba Islamic community. So generally speaking, most of the individuals, if you are staying within in the black community, they're going to be regular church folks and regular, so you have to think about your product. And unfortunately, sometimes if you are in a particular community that, is a controlled community, your network of customers may be a little hampered, right? So you're going to have to kind of blend and mix, with people in order to make to create revenue. So, and this is where, and it may be a time, actually, if you are in business, where you're not going to be, you know, throwing up your Muslim card. No one necessarily may care. They just want they want their attorney. They want you want their house. They want their house painted. They want their the driveway done. So they like, can you do the job? What's your qualifications to do this particular job? So that's where the conversation is going to have to be made in terms of young people with these degrees. But this interview that was seen on the Breakfast Club, and being that many conscious African-centered people, respect Mr. Farrakhan, and they see him up there, his words will be like gold, without having that counterbalance analysis. And at this particular time, you know, I felt the need, again, not, and I didn't seem hostile, because again, once on one point, yeah, we got to look at these degrees. We got all of them. We got to look at these degrees, man. And these HBCUs don't do a service by, I was talking to a PhD psychologist, that teaches at Lincoln, and they felt sorry. She said she felt sorry for these young people getting these degrees and they're not going to have a job, but she still was teaching them because she got to make money. She got to, she has to, be in, I guess, employed, as a professor. at a university, but she already did announce she know the dynamics of this economy, and she know that there are not these positions out here for black young people getting these. I guess it was psychology or maybe sociology degrees. So, and that's where I got that part from. But you can Google worthless top 10 worthless degrees. There's several sites and several there's an ABC special about the overcost of colleges, and so just play around with it. Look at some of these different things and draw your own conclusion. But from an African centered nation building perspective, from a understanding of history and culture, the African Studies Department has done a tremendous job, certainly with myself, and being able to, for me to evaluate different businesses, because there are many black business people out here and many black entrepreneurs that have money or more money than me, but they still think small, because I'm thinking, you know, the wealth of 6,000 years. I'm thinking the wealth of the past 500 and 600 years, and how the wealth was stolen and how resources were stolen. But I'm also looking at, the power potential, right? And so, if Dr. Wesley and members of the nation, and what's interesting is Amos Wilson said that Elijah Muhammad was one of the best black psychologists ever. But they won't give him that proper respect, right? They won't give him that proper respect. And so I'm gonna say that they won't reciprocate. So I'm gonna say it's gonna take individuals like myself who have these understandings and have mastered things like this. I've read this actually three times, uh, to continue to grow in my wisdom, that emotional intelligence I talked about, and not get, that high level of slavery debt, but also understand the role of our history. You know, uh, it's critical to understand the demographics of the world, geography of the world. You understand that through certain pieces, certain books, to understand the global economy contemporarily. Because again, Garvey wasn't necessarily a one that stayed on history. He was looking forward. So we need to look forward to this global economy, and understand how to position and reposition ourselves, and not, go into debt, of course, but certainly to look at this degree mill that's popping up. But, you know, we can't be totally disrespecting our scholars, or believing that our scholars, their knowledge didn't mean anything to us. So again, I know that some people, I tried to find a balance to understand it, because I just look at it, from my perspective, someone who did not, matriculate through the degree mill, but who still, again, read 100 books a year for 11 years, just like I was pursuing a degree path. And so, I'm not limited, and I can speak on a multitude of topics, unlike some of these other individuals who may be stuck in one discipline or area of study. So, again, I would hope that Dr. Wesley clarifies his position. Brother Mukasa has requested a debate with you on this. So if you're willing to accept that, uh, I'll make it happen. If you desire it, Dr. Wesley, I hope that you and members of the nation can develop some respect for uh, other nationalists or other Pan Africanists that may not have the total same ideology as you. And I'll just close with this. And I think that what is happening is that there's a lack of respect uh, on many members of the nation due to, I think, Doc Ben giving his books to the nation. Uh, and it is actually a failure of many of the African centered scholars. And maybe I don't know the dynamics of that, but I heard what Doc Ben said at that time, and it was just like, you know, I guess was what he said was the strongest organization at that time, and but again, you would be strong too if you got money from H.L. Hunt, Gaddafi, and now the Scientologists, because there's a video floating around talking about how uh, recently that the nation got $2 million for the Scientologists. So I'm saying if we are going to offer critiques about African Senate knowledge being costly, the Dianetics, the Ingrams, or whatever they call that training could be classified as not being worth whatever it is, ABC, however much it costs, $5,000, $10,000, whatever. So what I will say is you can get some of the more conscious, empowered knowledge from the Success Scholar and my tools of liberation, empowerment, and growth and freedom. The dozens of books that I've read and the hundreds of books that I've sold to others over the years. So that's all I have to say, brothers and sisters. Thank you all for tuning in. Do share, do click like, holler at the Success Scholar. We're going to another level, no question, no doubt. Stay tuned in for a real, relevant, practical, empowering plan and model. I'm out. Peace.